Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Marie Walter-Franke. I'm a researcher with the German Council on Foreign Relations in Berlin. I was actually a fellow of the Charlemagne Prize Academy in 2019, so thank you to the Charlemagne Prize Foundation for their invitation. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all today to this year's Brussels Speaking. This is a format that offers the young, bright minds of Europe the opportunity to dialogue with European insiders and deciders. Here with us in the room are laureates and candidates of the Charlemagne Prize Academy and the Charlemagne Youth Prize. So we have set the room to make this as interactive as possible, and I look forward to facilitating this exchange. To everyone in the room, this is your chance to ask your questions about the European democracy at work, for we have here three people who know the EU and especially the European Parliament in and out. So get your questions ready. To make it easy to converse directly, I'm speaking in English, but there is interpretation, so feel free to speak in German if you feel more comfortable. Before starting the conversation, let me introduce our distinguished guests. We have with us Katarina Barley. Dr. Barley, you are since 2019 the Vice President of the European Parliament, where you have been working for the defense of the rule of law and the integrity of the Schengen area, among many other things. Before moving to European politics, you served in Germany as Federal Minister of Justice and Family Affairs, and you also led the SPD, the German Social Democrats, as Secretary General. Thank you for joining us today. Also with us today is Dr. Hans-Gert Pöttering. Dr. Pöttering, you served in the European Parliament for 35 years, from the very first direct elections in 1979 until 2014. You have held key leading positions, are chairman of the EPP group and president of the European Parliament. You have worked for European unity, which is the mission of the Charlemagne Prize, as member of the board of the prize itself, in your work as chairman of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation and of the board of trustees of the House of European History in Brussels. Welcome and thank you for joining us. And last, alphabetically, but certainly not least, we are honored to be joined by Martin Schulz, chairman of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. As president of the European Parliament, you received the Charlemagne Prize yourself in 2015 in recognition of your accomplishment in service to the European democracy and the strengthening of the European Parliament. You have served at all levels of government in Europe and Germany, where you were the leader of the SPD and a candidate for the Chancellery. And on a personal note, I learned preparing for today that you were elected mayor on the year of my birth. And I was lucky to meet you as my mentor during the Charlemagne Fellowship. So, Mr. Schulz, it's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for joining us. Each of you have dedicated your lives to the European democracy. You have worked and are working for a strong EU that will be fit for the future. You know all the difficult dossiers, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on the times of trials and of promise that we face. I have in mind, of course, the ongoing fight for peace and democracy in Europe that the Ukrainian people is conducting, but also the European future of Ukraine, we just discussed in the last panel, and that we're honoring in this year's Charlemagne Prize. Our big continental experiment, the EU, is a work in progress. We have come a long way to make it a representative democracy. We have referenda, the Citizens' Initiative, and more recently, the Conference of the Future of Europe. So there are also challenges, undeniably. In 2019, the Spitzenkandidat of the EPP, Mr. Weber, did not end up becoming president of the Commission. Voters' turnout was just over 50%, which is an improvement, but still quite low. In 4 EU countries, it was even below 30%. According to the EP's barometer, 36% of EU citizens had a positive image of the Parliament, also more than earlier, but still, there can be improvements. But 58% of people who were asked to answer this survey wanted the European Parliament to play a strong role in future, and democracy was their top priority. There were scandals like the Qatar Gate that has showed that the European Parliament is taking action against corruption, yet it has also damaged its reputation and credibility. So before we invite questions in the room, what I would like is to break the ice, to ask each of you to take 3 minutes to share your vision, how to strengthen European democracy, what challenges do you see, and what do we need to address them. I suggest that we start with you, Ms. Barley, as Vice President of the European Parliament.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for setting up this wonderful panel setting discussion. We'll see. Well, before we come to the question how to strengthen the European Union, I would like to say that we need to protect it first, and I will dedicate my 3 minutes to that, because we are at a point, I think, where we have never been before, that the European Union is truly in danger. We see threats from outside, everybody knows, we have already talked about some of them. We've talked a lot about Russia, we could talk about China, we could talk about a lot of people or powers who do not want the European Union to be a strong geostrategic power. But we also have a lot of threats from within, and because they are not so much known, I would like to focus, or they are known, but the extent is not that well known. I would like to focus on this because I'm a lawyer by passion, and I've worked my whole professional and political life for the rule of law and democracy. That's what I'm passionate about. And we've always, in every country, had struggles with rule of law and democracy. There is no country where you can say it's perfect, no member state. But what is new is that we actually have 2 governments who, if they are sort of caught not complying with the rule of law or the values of Article 2, do not say, oops, oh, sorry, so we better change this, as you should, when, for example, the European Court of Justice or the European Commission says that you're not complying with the rule of law, but who say that they have the right to interpret Article 2, especially the rule of law, according to their history and culture. That is what they say. Now, of course, you can, we have 27 different judicial systems, for example. We have 27 different election systems, etc. That's fine. We are united in diversity. That's what we are. But you cannot and you must not discuss on the goal. And the goal is to install rule of law and democracy. And for example, to have a country like Hungary where really all the powers are concentrated in one hand now. Everything, media, justice, administration, parliament, you name it, civil society, it's all in one hand. So there is no separation of powers. That's the end of democracy. It's as easy as that. That's why I'm talking of Hungary as not being a democratic state anymore. So for me, strengthening European democracy means in the very first place reinstalling the rule of law in all the member states. We have the tools, we have created the tools, especially the European Parliament has contributed to that. We must use them. The Commission is not using them at the extent that it should, and I think this is really the most urgent problem that we have to attack.
Thank you so much for these first remarks. Dr. Pöttering, would you like to proceed?
I think the most important is for us as Europeans in the European Union that we are self-confident. And if we are not self-confident, we have not the courage to solve the challenges we are facing. And I had the privilege, and you said it, Marie, if I may call you Marie, it's easier than the double name. I had the privilege to be elected to the European Parliament in 1979. I was 32 years old, and I was asked very often by friends or by those who are not friends, what do you want to do in Strasbourg and Brussels? You have nothing to say there. And my response always was, we will fight for our rights. And if you look to the European Parliament now, or look back in '79, we had no legislation power at all. We had some influence on the budget, but no legislation power at all. And now, and I'm happy that some years I could cooperate with Martin Schulz as leader of the Socialists, Social Democrats, me as leader of the Christian Democrats European People Party. And now the European Parliament is a powerful institution of the European Union. We have full legislation, except taxes, but as far as the budget is concerned, we have the last word. And we vote for the Commission. And if we don't agree to the President of the Commission or to the Commission as such, it cannot take up its work. And what is very important, even in those times when we had not legislation power, the European Parliament always took initiatives. For instance, if you allow me to say, from 1984 to '94, I was chairman of the Subcommittee Security and Disarmament. And partly people laughed at us that we in the European Parliament started to discuss security questions. But I didn't mind that people laughed at us or thought we are naive, because my conviction always was we need a strong European Union on the basis of parliamentary institutions, and we need a European policy, and we need to defend our values. And that's the most important, that we know we have values: the dignity of each human being, democracy, human rights, liberty, peace, and the legal order, which was mentioned by Vice President Barley. And we have to be proud of that, but we need to defend this. And so we need a strong foreign security and defense policy. And I think this is a great challenge now, to develop a strong foreign defense policy to defend our values. And the Ukraine, the war of Russia or of Putin, the dictator, the devil in the Kremlin, is an example. His war against Ukraine is an example that we have to make the European Union stronger as far as defense is concerned. And this is one of the greatest challenges for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Schulz.
Yeah, from a principle point of view, I have nothing to add to what Katarina said about the rule of law and the necessity to defend this spirit of democracy within the European Union. This is absolutely, in my eyes, from the highest priority, and also what Hans-Gert said is absolutely clear. I'm worried about another thing. 70% of member states of the United Nations are not democracies. And looking to the vote about Ukraine and the war, 2 countries abstained from the resolution condemning the war. That was China and India. These 2 countries together have 2.8 billion citizens. It's more than a third of world population. And looking to the shift of economic power, 70% of world GDP is coming from the Pacific area, not from the Atlantic area. That means the European Union is in a double-way challenge. On one hand, our democratic model is not accepted by a majority of countries in the world. This is one of our biggest problems, and some of our competitors and opponents, economic competitors and opponents, are ideologically completely on another path than the European Union. And the biggest problem for the European Union is that it is institutionally not on the necessary height of our times. To tackle the challenges, we need a structural reform of the European Union. My first speech as President of the European Council, Parliament in the European Council, started with a sentence I want to repeat here. I addressed the head of states and government. This is the privilege of the President of the European Parliament to open the sessions of the European Council with a speech. 90% are not listening and dealing with their iPhones and whatever of the heads of states and government. And therefore I started my speech with the following sentence, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the problem of the European Union is sitting around that table. I think the reintroduction of the principle of unanimity by the back door in the Lisbon Treaty, where we transferred 80% of 80 political levels to the majority vote, was an alarming sign for a lot of member states, because they saw that if they have not a chance to counterbalance it, the European Parliament would become, in reality, the strongest institution in the European Union. And therefore, in my eyes, was this attempt to give a blocking institution defending national interests against communitary interests if a national government is of the opinion we have to block it because of our particular national interests. And this is happening every day. Every day. And this is a risk for the European Union structurally, because in the times we are living, to tackle the challenges I just mentioned with China, or with the United States led by a Mr. Trump or President-style Trump, or with some other regions of the world by far not similar to our democracy, like the ASEAN cooperation, for example, with Indonesia, with Vietnam, Philippines, such countries which are more or less semi-democracies, to be polite. Or in competition with the BRICS countries, China, India, South Africa, Brazil. We need a European Union which is able to act strongly and boldly with a common political line, because the 21st century is not multiple bilateralism, Luxembourg with China, or Germany with India, or France with Brazil. If we want to matter as European Unions in the 21st century, it must be the European Union with 450 million inhabitants, with the strongest single market in the world, acting together with a common line. And here, to conclude, we need power and credibility to defend our democratic model as a precondition, the credibility of the democratic model. But if countries, we have to compete with China in these countries, in Africa, for example, in Latin America or in Asia, and they tell us, you are speaking about democracy, look to Mr. Orban. You should not give us lessons. If you are not sticking to your own values at home, then we are lost. Therefore, I think we need what Katarina rightly said, to defend our model inside the European Union, to make the European Union able to act internationally. And this is the opposite, in my eyes, of what some of the member states have in mind for the time being.
Thank you. So we've picked up on several topics already. We have defending the rule of law within the European Union. We have not shying away from things that seem unattainable or not yet in the hands of the European Union, and looking towards a strong international foreign policy. We have fighting with other international systems and trying to defend our model inside and outside. I would already like, because we don't have a lot of time, to give you the chance to ask all of your questions. Thank you so much. Okay, we won't have so there is a microphone right here. Maybe it's best to hand it around. Okay, so we have a first question right here, lady. Yep, here. Yep.
Okay, so thank you very much for your intervention. My name is Francesca Crista and I'm coming from Europulse, former winner for the Charlemagne Youth Prize last year, and I'm also aboard of an alumni network. And I have two questions. How can we specifically fight Euroscepticism, like we, the youth organization and young people? And the second would be, you know that in the European Parliament has been a proposal of youth organization, the youth check. I mean, all the policies to be debated and for the young people to be consulted over each policy of the European Union, because youth are affected by all the policies. And I would like to ask you, is it possible for the young people to be consulted and for the youth check to be reality? And if so, in how many years? And thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hand the microphone? There was, yeah, okay. We'll take 3 to 4 questions and then go around the panel.
Hello, I'm Monica Petkova and I came from Bulgaria. I'm a youth worker there in the biggest youth space. And my question is about how can me as a youngster can take more democratic decisions, because in my country a lot of others' opinion, older people and leaders were put on us, and because I work in the youth space, I want to have the chance to get advice from you. How can I do the best and the more democratic way? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hand the microphone to the person behind you?
Hi, my name is Luke. I'm the Irish national winner for the European Charlemagne Peace Prize. Wording. It's been a long day. So just following on from your point, Euroscepticism obviously has doubled across Europe in the last 15 years, and we're seeing a high rise, especially Brexit and other things like that. Just what do you think? Do you see a clear solution? And Europe has now been called a failing democracy, and it's unfortunately something that we have to look towards on how we can defend, Europe and our values. Do you see a clear solution coming in the future, or do you see that there has to be a full restructure, as Mr. Schulz said?
Thank you. One last question. Yes, with the yellow band. Yeah.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Diego, and I'm from Spain. And my question has to do with democracy. We talk a lot about democracy, but I feel like there is a huge space to improve on it through technology. I think technology hasn't reached how we take decisions. And I would like to ask you, what do you think about digital democracy systems, people being able to take part in, through consultations, for example, in the public debate? And what do you think about other democratic systems, such as semi-representative democracy?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll stop this round of questions here. So we had questions about youth-checking policies, fighting Euroscepticism of young people, and looking towards digital democratic system. Let's start from here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I tried to combine your questions, and I hope that I understood them. As far as Euroscepticism is concerned, I think that it's very important that we ourselves, and that's where I started with my little statement some minutes ago, that we are self-confident, that we believe in the European process, that we believe in our values. And I think just now is a moment to tell our public, to tell our people what the difference is between the European Union. With our values, we are a legal system, we have to defend our law, because law makes it possible, if we follow the law, that we live peacefully with each other. But outside the European Union is Europe as well, and law is not accepted, as we see in the war of Russia against Ukraine. And I think if we explain now to our public what the great value of the European Union is, they will understand, and hopefully we can diminish the Euroscepticism. It's very difficult, but I think we can do it, and the war of Russia against Ukraine is an example what great value the European Union as a peace movement in itself is. But we have to defend our legal system, and I agree what has been said by both of you. Hungary was mentioned, and if we don't defend our legal system in the European Union, we weaken the European Union, and in the end we will not be strong enough to believe in our values if the values are not accepted in the member states. But if we take the whole European Union together, I think we are strong. We have deficits and we have to fight against those deficits, but we should think, if we take all levels of policy together, the local level, the regional level, the national level and the European level, we are strong as far as our legal system is concerned. We are not a paradise on earth, but I think the European Union is a better part of the world, and I think we have to defend it and explain it better to the people.
Thank you. And one question I didn't mention, well, that was asked, is also how to be involved as a young person in European politics. Maybe you can say something to that.
Yes, well, I will try to give very brief answers to the questions. Against Euroscepticism, I would say, first of all, we really have to deliver. People have to feel why, why it is really good to be in the European Union. And there are many ways that we can do it. We can do it economically, socially, by strengthening women's rights, LGBTI rights. There's so much we can do. Fighting climate change, I think it's absolutely, for your generation, it's absolutely crucial. It doesn't make sense if Luxembourg fights climate change or Malta alone, and everybody sees that, and we're very active on this. Secondly, look at what happens if you're not in. Look at what happens to the Brits at the moment. I'm half British, so I really feel bad about what's happening. The youth check, I'm not really convinced that we will do this as a parliament or as commission. Maybe the youth commissioner could do that, but we have this sort of, we would have to have these sort of checks probably then on, I'm a feminist, so impact on women, impact on the environment, impact on, so there are quite a lot of impacts that would be worth discussing also. But what you can do and should do, I was part of the conference on the future of Europe, maybe some of you were too, and one of the ideas was to follow up and have councils. That was one of the recommendations in the member states, where you really discuss all of these issues, and there to establish something that has a look, especially also on the youth issues. Maybe Bulgaria, how to influence. I mean, I guess in a country like Bulgaria, where you're facing the, I don't know, maybe 6th or what election in a very short time, I think you can really make a difference. In some member states, you have even more than in other countries. You have new parties popping up. I mean, all of us, we are members of very traditional parties, and I'm very proud of the long tradition of my party. So I would be glad if all of you joined a party. But you can be part of, especially in these countries, in the movement, and you're already doing it. You're already influencing politics by taking part in the Charlemagne Youth Prize, by influencing us, lawmakers. You can either become a lawmaker yourself, or you influence lawmakers, or pressure them. However, that's the two choices that you have, actually. And democracy and technology, there are great possibilities. Where are you? There. There are great possibilities, and participation definitely is the best part of it. There are real challenges and even threats that come from digitalization to democracy. We all know disinformation as the biggest, but also a certain form of perpetuating bias, which often happens when you integrate digital mechanisms. So I think our challenge is to use the good parts, especially on participation, but to be very, very careful when it comes to other parts, for example, deep fakes and whatever. So we have to do both.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I agree with everything. 3 short observations. I joined the party with 17 years. SPD.
No, yesterday I said.
Yesterday?
Yesterday, the 17th, yesterday.
Ah,
That was yesterday.
Hans-Gert, thank you very much. So nice. You are so wonderful. You could be a member of my party. And I forgive you the error not to join our party.
It's never too late.
My principle was to describe my principle, to answer to your question about young people and arguments from a government or from institutions or pressure. An Irish literature Nobel Prize, George Bernard Shaw, the British, the English consider him always as an English, but he was an Irish. I must translate it because I don't know the real formula in English. I know it only in German, and I tried to translate it. He said more or less, as a man who got at the end, I think, 94 years when he died. He had 94, I think. He said, as an already old man, don't rely on old men. They don't care about the future. And it's true. I don't know how it is with you, but as older I'm becoming, as more I'm thinking, this is enough now. You have done enough. It's now up to other people. I have perhaps still 10, 15 years. It's already, I have 67 years. 15 years, I'm 82. So I have enough done. They don't care about the future, but the future is what is ahead to you. Therefore, I think we need consultation of young people. Decision makers are obliged to listen to young people. And to get to your technology check, I'm listening the whole day to young people about iPod, iPhone, I don't know what not. Here. Really, I'm a bookseller in my professional life. I'm reading books until today. And nevertheless, I know this is the future, and I'm obliged to do it. And so I refused years and years to get an iPhone. I have now an iPhone. And I was fed up with iPhones. All my collaborators, when they had handies at the beginning in the European Parliament, they were always so running. And I said, I'm now president, but it's not necessary to be so humble.
I don't think the debate about iPhones is necessary with this room.
They were looking for the, what's Steckdose in English? Steckdose.
And the plugs.
They were looking for the plug for the iPhone. So, but I have to admit, these are the 3 things. You must have a known position, develop a known position, defend them against older people. We must, for the time being, look to the technological possibilities to destroy democracy or to strengthen democracy. The destroyers, they're on the road. So we need technology to defend democracy, and we have to listen to young people. Question to overcome Euroscepticism is one answer in my eyes, emotion. The European language is too technical. We must be more emotional. The destroyers, they are emotional. And we are always technical. That's the reason why I'm always so outspoken.
Wonderful. You want a short reaction here?
Yeah, I would like to add something, because Martin Schulz spoke about age. So I'm 77. So,
Looking younger than ever.
younger than ever, yes, okay. Recently, the former President of the United States, Barack Obama, was in Germany. And generally, I must say, I have a good opinion of Obama. But he made, I think, a wrong statement. He said, before an audience of young people like you, that the elder generation should step down and make place for the younger generation. And now, in a few months or in a year or 1.5 years, he has to fight for Joe Biden to remain President of the United States. And so, this is really my deep opinion. Truth and credibility is a basis of everything. And you should not say, because you are young, you need the power now and the old one should go. What we need is a good cooperation of all generations. You need young ones, you need the middle-aged, you need the elderly ones, and I am not part of politics anymore, but I try to speak to young people. And I want to say one thing, and we have so many experience together, and what the European Parliament can do, and this concerns you, and this is the Erasmus program. You know, the European Union has this 7 years period for the budget, and when we both, Martin Schulz and myself, and this might be interesting for Vice President Barley as well, the governments wanted to reduce the money for Erasmus by 3 billion. By 3 billion. And we said, and we had a meeting with the incoming President of the European Council in Vienna, and we said to the Prime Minister or to the Chancellor of Austria, Schüssel, who is a personal friend of mine, if you don't come back with the 3 billion, we will say no. And so the governments increased the budget again because we insisted as European Parliament. And so this is an example how important the European Parliament is and what we can do for the young generation. And I think the Erasmus program is one of the best things the European Union has, because it makes it possible that you meet and that you are engaged for the European integration.
The same thing happened with the last budget, by the way. They tried to cut Erasmus, again, the last budget, and we did exactly the same, yeah.
Very good.
As the mother of 2 Erasmus babies, I thank you. We have so many questions. I don't want to neglect the back of the room. We have one question here. Yeah, thank you.
So hello, my name is Laura. I'm a national winner of the Youth Charlemagne Prize from Luxembourg. And my question is also about integrity and about our democracy and our values. This is a very critical question, but seeing with the Second World War, we always say, please, we should never do this again or let this happen. And also, like, in Europe itself, there are always people that get radicalized, and it's already a great challenge to not let these people come to power in Europe. But then when I see with our relations across the globe, with China, for example, what is happening with the Muslims in this country, and the media coverage is not a lot, and we just let it happen. And I find it so sad, and like, I'm very young and very idealistic, so I'm like, what could we potentially do to stop or give an end to it?
Yes?
Hi. Thanks. My name is Henry. I come from Finland, but I'm living in Belgium at the moment. And I think it's very good that we've been talking so much about the strategic autonomy of the EU, about kind of the geopolitical position we are in. That's all very valuable, very good. But also I think we just had a discussion this morning about the European elections next year and how we as young Europeans can extend the message to, European voters, get people interested. Because to be honest, like, this is a good discussion, but we are political scientists, we are university students, all that kind of thing. And like, as you were mentioning, the problem with Europe is it's, too complicated, too complex, too kind of high up there. So I think I'm happy that the Parliament has been doing things like, the directive on adequate minimum wages, the recommendation on minimum incomes, just improving the single market, the social market economy and all that. So I was just wondering, like, how do you, in the Parliament's perspective, see the ability to make things easier for the average European, the person who is dealing with the high cost of living, with the high energy crisis, so that, we also make sure that the internal market, the single market, is working as best as it can for the average European, the person who is not in these kinds of events. So thanks.
We have a question right at the back. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Katinka from Romania. I'm here with the Democracy International team from Germany. I've noticed that there wasn't a lot of emphasis on education, and I think education is really the root of everything. We need to focus more on education, and teachers need help to help others. How can we do that? Do you have plans regarding this situation? Thank you very much.
Hard to decide. Here, right here.
Hello, my name is Dana Novacescu. I come also from Romania, and I'm a former national winner of the Charlemagne Youth Prize, and I'm also a law student and an Erasmus student. So I totally agree with what was said about the Erasmus program. It was incredibly amazing. But at the moment, I'm preoccupied with my bachelor thesis on fight against corruption, and on the moment, the Romanians, and you can see that in the Eurobarometer made from the European Union last year, that they are very preoccupied about corruption. And what I could observe is that prosecution now is this, like every single state is stressing prosecution and disciplinary actions. But prosecution and disciplinary action may eliminate the offender, but it cannot eradicate the phenomenon of corruption. So I think that we should change the focus on prevention measures. And as I saw from my research, there are not effective prevention measures at the moment, also in the European Union and also at the level of the member states. So what can we do? Because there are a lot of directives, a lot of international legal instruments, but they're not being applied. We don't see any real action, any...
Okay. So we have 4 questions. One is, Europe is supposed to be about a project of peace. And if I understand you correctly, what you're asking is, what's tomorrow's project of peace? Because there is a bit of a lack of perspective or vision, maybe. We have a question about the disconnect and the complexity of the European Union and how to make it more intelligible to citizens, especially young citizens. We have a question about what the EU can do to support education, even though that's a member state prerogative, vastly. And we have a question about how to prevent corruption better.
Okay, but I tend to answer to all the questions, so I don't know if that is what you want, guys. But I will. I'll try. So, why do we let it happen? That's one of the toughest questions for me. As I said, I'm absolutely passionate about democracy and rule of law, and it hurts me almost physically to see what is going on in some parts of the world. But, of course, our possibility to influence that is limited, and we try to do it. Martin already mentioned, for example, our collaboration with other countries, for example, through free trade agreements. And there we always try to have chapters that relate to fundamental rights, to workers' rights, to environment, whatever. We're getting better at that. And of course, we use our limited, as Hans-Gert Pöttering said, diplomatic powers. At the moment, I think, I'm not sure how many, I think 6 or 8 European parliamentarians are banned from entering China because we as a parliament, and they specifically have been too outspoken about the fate of the Uyghurs in China. So we really try. But we have to be aware that it is a difficult task. And I think I might leave that to Martin because he is so much more experienced. That, of course, you know, if you go to Africa and you say, look, we help you if you uphold values, then they say, that's fine, thanks. There are others waiting, you know. But for Martin has so much more experience, I think I'll leave that part maybe more to you. but the other one, the Finnish question, I can answer because I'm, as a vice president, also responsible for communication, which more than anything implies the election campaign. And I came to the European Parliament having been, amongst others, Secretary General of my party, by the way, with a head of the party called Martin Schulz. And I thought, look, I know about communication and campaigning, I'll tell them, because you don't hear anything, you don't see anything about European Parliament, I'll tell them how it works. Oof. How arrogant can you be? Of course, when I came there, they have a huge department, very capable people, they're doing great things, but it's so difficult to get information to people who who are not interested, who don't even know that you exist as a European Parliament. You know, for a lot of people, it's just Europe. They don't know about the institutions at all. So I could elaborate on that a long time. The only thing I will actually stress now is my favorite project, which is collaboration with influencers. I think this is really something that works well. And you can be these influencers too, talking about what can I do. You can be influencers. Just last week I met a bunch of them, just normal European people, but young people, but who have built a huge followership for whatever. Can be sports, can be culture, can be fashion, I don't know, I don't care. But not politics, usually. And if you get those people to say, look, Europe is so important, it shapes your life. A lot of your life depends on this election, and maybe we'll come to that later. This election more than any other election, I'm convinced. Then people who have never actually related to Europe and the European Union will say, oh, okay, if this influencer says we should care about Europe, let's think about it at least, and maybe go and vote. So I think this is something we can really do. Education, unfortunately, we have very little competences there, which is sad, but it's true as a European Union. But we have Euro scholars. I would like to advocate for them. If you have any influence in this stage, please invite schools to become Euro scholars, to build a partnership with the European Parliament, and that means that we support them in at least educating kids more on European issues and affairs, and to have contacts, etc. And fight against corruption, yes, that's a really difficult. We have, I think Romania is in the EPPO, European Public Prosecutor's Office. So this is a huge tool to combat corruption. I'm glad that we have it. Unfortunately, of course, Hungary is not part of it, and the Commission has not, and I'm furious about this, the Commission has not made it a condition for Hungary to get its money, that is at the moment suspended, to join the European Public Prosecutor's Office. I mean, what the hell, you know? Hungary is going to build an own anti-corruption body, and everybody who knows just that much about Viktor Orban knows what's going to happen, which is happening at the moment. It will be full of people that are devoted to him, and nothing will actually happen. But you have it. It's important. We also have mechanisms to hold back European money if the state does not do enough against corruption. So we do have instruments, but I agree it's not being used as efficiently as it could be.
I can't get back to all the questions, and therefore I would answer to you, to the young lady from Luxembourg. I forgot your name. I know, behind you from Luxembourg. Laura, yeah. I had the privilege to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for the European Union 10 years ago, and I'm deeply convinced until today that it was absolutely right and justified that the European Union received the Nobel Peace Prize. And to answer to your question, within the European Union, amongst the member states of the European Union, war is more or less impossible. the political, the social, the economic, the cultural integration between these member states of the European Union makes it more or less unthinkable. Nothing is impossible, but I can't imagine, and I try to be concrete. Let's imagine you go out in the streets in Berlin and ask a young man, should we attack the French? He will immediately appeal the medical security. Could you imagine that you go out into the streets in Paris and tell to a young woman, should we attack the Germans? It's more or less a psychological case then, not a political one. It's impossible. I doubt that the same would happen if you go in Moscow to the streets and ask a young man or a young woman, should we attack another country? He would perhaps answer yes, I'm prepared. That means within the European Union, structurally, we made war unthinkable. But we are not longer speaking about that. This is one of the biggest problems, that storytelling about this wonderful development. We are 72 years after the end of the Second World War. I tell you now two stories. His father died some month before the end of the Second World War. He is born in 1945, September 45. His father died before he was born, as a German soldier on the soil of another country. Quite understandable that Hans-Gert, educated by his mother, became a pro-European. And the whole generation of people, he wrote his doctor thesis about the foreign policy of Konrad Adenauer, the man who integrated Germany into the European Union. It's absolutely understandable that the generation of Hans-Gert were pro-European. One of our common friends, Jean-Claude Juncker, long-serving Prime Minister of your country, I had the privilege to meet his father. The father of Juncker became in 1940 a forced soldier of the German army, because Hitler declared Luxembourg is not a nation. This is a part of the German nation. They have to serve in our army. And he went to Russia with the German army by force, forced to be a German soldier. He came as a prisoner of war to Siberia because for the Russians he was a Nazi soldier. And he got back in 1947, deeply scared and depressed, and said to his son, if we want to get peace in Europe, Germany must become a democracy. And we might have to forgive them. These are the stories. In my eyes, such people were heroes. But nobody knew about that. Juncker never spoke publicly about that. But that, for Luxembourg, it was not the only one. A lot of people here in Belgium, on the other side in the Netherlands, people suffering by German occupation and war crimes, similar to what happens now in Bakhmut or in Bucha. But not only cases, thousands of such cases. These people on the other side of the border here in Aachen, they forgave us after the Second World War, 5 years later. The war ended in 1945. In 1950, Germany became a full-fledged member of the European Community of Coal and Steel, the nucleus of the European Union of today. Why we are not telling these stories? I quote Juncker once more, because I remembered when he once said in the European Parliament in a speech, for our grandchildren, Hitler will be as far as Napoleon is for us. And this is an enormous risk. The European Union internally is a community of peace. And therefore we are obliged to defend the European Union when we want to defend and to secure peace. It's as easy as such.
Yes, it's not very true, but impressive as well, what Martin Schulz has said. And you allow me to quote you? Martin knows more about me than many people, but anyhow, myself maybe. And he made, when I was elected President of the European Parliament, and Martin was chairman of the Socialists, he made a speech so well, so he could be a Christian Democrat. So I give it back to him now, what he said a few minutes. But it was very remarkable what he said, and I never forget this. What you said when I was elected President of the European Parliament. But the question of education, I think it's of greatest importance. And that's why we have built a House of European History. And if you have not yet been there, in the House of European History, behind the European Parliament in Brussels, I advise you to go there. And there is a deep truth, and Martin Schulz spoke about National Socialism, a totalitarian state. But there is a totalitarian on the left as well, and that was the Soviet Union. And there was a great Jewish lady, Hannah Arendt, Jewish, who taught as a political scientist in America. She left Germany during the 30s, and she described the instruments of a totalitarian state. And she said the instruments of the National Socialists and the instruments of the Soviet Union, Stalinism, Hitlerism, the results are the same. And I think this is a great challenge of your generation, that we resist all forms of authoritarian and totalitarian states and developments. And I come back to my point I mentioned earlier. I think it's of greatest importance that truth is a basis of politics. And I'm not very familiar with the new social media, but you are familiar with it. And we have to insist that the informations you get or we get by the social media are based on truth. And if this is not the case, I think we have to have a legislation on the European level, on the national level, that everything what we get as information must be based on truth. Otherwise, we will be in a terrible situation, and the people, especially young people, will be misled. And my second point is from the friend of Finland. Sovereignty for the European Union. I think the direction is the right one, but we should not discriminate the North Atlantic Alliance. Finland and Sweden will join the North Atlantic Alliance. And even some years ago, we would not have imagined that Finland would become a member of NATO. But now you will, and this is a result of the policy of this dictator in the Kremlin. But imagine if one day the Americans would withdraw. There comes another Trump or so, or Trump himself, and we are not prepared. And that's why I say the policy of Macron is right in the way that we have to be more European. We should remain Atlantic, but we should be more European. And I think this is a great task and responsibility of all member states of the European Union. And we as Germans say it's vital to have a good cooperation with France. And by the way, in 1990, Martin Schulz mentioned the coal and steel community. The answer for reconciliation came from France, from Robert Schuman, and he was a deep believer in Christianity, but even if not, he was the right. The reconciliation came from France. And before 1950, the principle always has been, after a war, to make the army stronger again, the national army, to fight for the next, to prepare for the next war. And so I think it's very vital that we understand that the European Union in itself is a peace union, but we have to do everything to make it stronger and to be in the situation that we can defend our own values. So, in one word, remain Atlantic, but become more European, and I think it's a great responsibility of Macron and of the German Chancellor Scholz to find an agreement and to speak to all the other heads of government to make the European Union stronger. And I think my country, my Chancellor, who is not my party, has a great responsibility to move further in this direction of making the European Union stronger.
Thank you. We started a bit late, so last round of questions, make it crisp, make it count. Let's start here. Right.
I tried this question the last panel, but I'll try again because the answer was people are different, and this is something that really worries me. So it was mentioned that threats from within are present, and one of them for me, coming from Estonia, is not only reluctance to accept the European Union, but the reluctance to accept the Estonian state. Narva, a whole city, 90+% Russian speaking, and they almost elected a person who the same day of elections was in Moscow at Solovyov's show to the parliament. And it's obvious that their attitude is very hostile. It is prevalent, it is very loud, and it's creating a lot of problems in the small state of Estonia, similar situation in Latvia and Lithuania. But that's the Russian-speaking minority in those countries that's been there for a long time. I'm also hearing and seeing this reaction in people who aren't even related to Russia, who have just been interested in the culture and happen to speak the language. And now they're upholding Putin's sort of discourse. And I've just been to Hungary, walking around the streets of Budapest. It reminds me, as somebody who has been to Moscow many times, of the vibes I was seeing there a long time ago.
And your question is?
And my question is, with all this in mind, how do we not pass the point we passed with Ukraine and Russia? Because there's been a lot of allowances on behalf of the EU buying things that we shouldn't maybe been buying. We observe these problems, and in the last discussion, the answer was basically people are different. That's nothing we can do there. But to me, that is a very worrying situation that I observe now. Can we act on it now so that it doesn't get worse?
Your neighbor?
Actually, also physically, neighbor, Anthony Fedorov. I am the Charlemagne Youth Prize national winner from Finland. My question is short, sweet. We've observed this phenomenon in other international organizations, UN namely, but we see this also in the EU. How can we combat national governments using the EU to promote their successes, and then when their failures happen, it's all apparently the EU's fault, namely with love from having studied in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question here. Yes. Oh.
I'm Euroscepticism from Euroscepticism. Cuando vamos a tener creamos especialista para las personas con discapacidad en Europa.
Maybe you can translate
Please.
Spanish. The translation? Yeah, if you like. I could have also.
He wanted to ask, when will there be an Erasmus program for people with special disabilities? Because currently there is a program for people that are blind, for example, and the program is adapted so that they can have the studies that they do, for example, turned into a language they can understand. But what there isn't is an Erasmus Plus for special people with Down syndrome and things like that. And the question is, will there be one? When? So.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for all the questions we couldn't take. We have a couple of minutes to finish. So, concluding statements answering these 3 questions. Make it sweet.
If the guys push you first, as a woman, always be careful. But no, just joking, just joking. Yes, well, the Russian-speaking minorities or majorities, Hungary, there was a survey in Hungary how many Fidesz voters, so voters for Orban's party, actually believe that it's Russia's fault, or responsibility, this war. Can you guess how many Fidesz voters thought it was Russians' responsibility? Give me a number. You've heard my speech before. She said 5, it's actually 4. 4% in Fidesz voters believe that it's Russia's responsibility. The others say it's the US, the EU, NATO, or Ukraine itself. So that is what disinformation can do. And even the Fidesz MEPs, members of European Parliament, they voted in favor of sanctions against Russia, but they said at home that they voted against. They really did, it's not a joke. And that only works if you have the media completely in your hands. There is not one single independent radio station anymore in Hungary. There is one, two TV, but radio, none left, and papers very little. So this is what happens. So what we actually have to fight, or can fight, we cannot forbid them to think what they think. And I'm therefore also a bit critical on, we have to make sure that something is the truth, because as a lawyer and a former judge, I know that truth is something subjective. And you can swear that this guy was wearing a red coat, and you can give your life for it, and it might still not be true. So this is dangerous. But what we have to do is fight disinformation as much as we can. We cannot put up a ministry for truth or something like that, as in Harry Potter. We should not. We should refrain from that. It's dangerous. So what we did, for example, we in the Digital Services Act, we actually obliged the big platforms to act as if content is contested, and to check, to verify, and to react, to withdraw, or to block, or whatever. We have to do counter true information. We have to be there and say what is happening, what is really happening. But without wanting to deceive you, we cannot forbid them to think what they think or to be who they are. That's true. So we have to strengthen those who are telling the truth, and we have to combat those who disseminate lies. That is what we can do and what we are doing. We have also legislation on foreign interference, so we're really doing this. Yes, and I leave the other to the others.
We need to conclude very soon. Maybe just a couple of sentences to close.
Can you repeat what you said?
We need to conclude, and Mr. Linden is waiting for the stage. So just a couple of sentences to close this session.
Okay, I think politics always have to be credible. And the example President Barley just mentioned, as far as Hungary is concerned, I was in Budapest 5 weeks ago, and I saw many, what is it, diese Säulen, many publications outside in the public, advertisement or whatever we call it, that 90% of the Hungarian population is against sanctions against Russia. And in Brussels, Orban is voting in favor of sanctions. And so this is a misinformation. And I think we have to be very careful that what we do is in accordance with what we say. Otherwise, politics is not credible anymore. And Brexit is an example. If you always distinguish between what is a reality and what finally the people do, then it becomes dangerous. Johnson was a liar, and Cameron prepared this way. The Conservatives were part of the group which I led in the European Parliament. 90% of them were excellent, and I had no problems with them, but Cameron always spoke reluctantly or badly about the European Union, And then he expected that the British would vote in favor of staying in the European Union. And so we must be very careful what we say. And my last point is Finland, that the national governments, when they have a success or they think they have a success in Brussels, then they are the great heroes, but if there are negative developments, then Brussels is responsible. And my understanding of politics is that the different levels of politics, the local level, the regional level, the national level, and the European level, have to have an understanding that everything belongs to each other, and there should not be a contradiction between the European and national level or between the national level and the regional level. So politics is something which concerns all levels, and we need more cooperation and more understanding between these different levels.
Thank you. Last word?
I agree with everything. The European Union is not a federal state in which Germany has the role like Florida in the United States or France, the role of Texas. We are a union of sovereign countries. And if the governments of these sovereign countries don't feel responsible and accountable for the union will fail. But that is the reality in the majority of member states. Giorgia Meloni is an example. She led the whole election campaign against the European Union. Now she's a prime minister. She knows that she can't go against the Union because Italy is depending from the money from the European Union. It's an easy as such. But deep in their heart, she is against the European Union. And my feeling, looking to the single market and the economic effect of the single market and the advantage of the member states having from the single market, we have a lot of salesmen in the European Union and few statesmen. And this is one of our biggest problems, that exactly what you described happens every day. Success is national, failure is European, and then people are astonished and surprised that the citizens have the same feeling. If you are not, as a leader of a national government, prepared to explain to your own nation that even countries like Germany will not survive in worldwide competition politically and economically without the European Union, if you not declare to your people that you will not tackle the challenges of the 21st century alone, but only in that community, then you are playing with the advantages and the chances of the next generation. And this is, in my eyes, in too much national capitals the case.
Thank you.
Just to answer on the Erasmus question, I checked it while the others were speaking, because I knew that in the new Erasmus program, it is supposed to be an inclusive program. We really put a high importance there, and there is a website that is called inclusivemobility.eu where you can find everything. And for Germany, I know that persons with handicaps, or however you call that in your language, get additional funding. So I don't know about Spain. I tried to check it. I wasn't quick enough, but have a look there. And actually, especially students with disabilities should be included into Erasmus. That's one of the big new achievements that we were able to get. So good luck.
Thank you so much for everyone in the room, up here, and in the audience for this amazing discussion. I hope everybody is going to leave inspired.